Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to Quranic Connection TV. And in today's daily Quran challenge, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is answering the question, like, why is my life falling apart? Like, this is a question that many of us ask at different stages in our lives. Like, myself included, there have been stages in my life where I felt as though like everything is falling apart around me. Like nothing is going right. Like it doesn't matter what I do, everything is going against me. And this is something that most of humanity face. It doesn't matter whether you believe or you don't believe. People, through their natural endeavors in their lives, they end up at this stage at one point or another. Now, why does that happen? And so here, in the verse where the answer is made clear to us, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says,
كان الناس أمة واحدة فبعث الله النبيين مبشرين ومنذرين وأنزل معهم الكتاب.
So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, كان الناس أمة واحدة. The human race was one nation. That's right. They were one people. They weren't divided. They weren't different nations. They were one people. When was that? That was at the advent of humanity with Adam alayhi salam and Hawa. With the Prophet Adam alayhi salam and his offspring. They were people who would worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They weren't people of desires. They were people of obedience to Allah. And because of that, there was equity, there was balance, there was equilibrium, there was justice on the face of the planet, on the face of the earth. And then what does Allah say? فَبَعَثَ اللَّهُ النَّبِيِّينَ. And then Allah sent other prophets. Why did Allah send other prophets? Because, in fact, why did Allah send other prophets? We're going to get to that in just a moment. But then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says what? Prophet says what? Those prophets were sent mubashirina, like giving glad tidings to the people. They came with good news. Good news of what? Good news of paradise and the route to paradise. And what's the second thing Allah says? وَمُنذِرِينَ. And as warners. So these prophets, they were sent as people of good news and people warning the people. Warning against what? Warning against the fire. Warning against any route that will take you to the hellfire, meaning the disobedience of Allah. So establishing a balance on the earth after there had been an imbalance. And why did Allah say Nabiyina? Because Allah sent prophet after prophet after prophet. And then from amongst those prophets there were messengers. And those messengers, they came with what? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَأَنزَلَ مَعَهُمُ الْكِتَابِ. And revealed with them the book, بِالْحَقِّ, the book of truth, the book of reality of this dunya and the akhirah. Allah is telling us every time that we steer away from the main route to paradise, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is warning us and enticing us and bringing us back to the route that will take you to paradise. Allah wants mercy for humanity, all of humanity. And so here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, like, كَانَ النَّاسُ أُمَّةً وَاحِدَةً. Now look, what's the connection between that and my life falling apart? Now and this is the secret in this verse. So what was the key factor that took the people away from Allah? And what's the relationship between that and my life falling apart? And the link between the two is simple. It is desire. Like, why does your life fall apart? We'll talk about that in just one moment. But let me explain to you, like, why did the nations split off and it become different nations and people going towards different directions, worshipping different gods? Why did that happen? And the simple answer is that they didn't obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They didn't follow the guidance. And because they didn't follow the guidance, what were they following? If they're not following guidance, then they're following desire. Because the shaitan comes to us, comes to you, comes to me and entices me with something that I desire. Shaitan's not going to lead me astray with something that I don't want. So shaitan comes to me and pulls at the strings of the heart and pulls me towards that which I want. And there are some basic human needs that we all desire. Like, we desire certainty, we desire to be sure of ourselves, we desire to feel as though we're secure, and we desire love, we desire acknowledgement, we desire things. Like, there are a number of different emotions that we desire, and these emotions, if you can pull on these emotions as the shaitan does, then you can pull us towards any direction that you want. And that's what shaitan does. Shaitan will come to you and using your desire for something will pull you in one direction or another. But the main goal is that he pulls you off the path of following Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it will pull you in the different direction. And all other directions go to the fire. Only one direction heads towards Allah, and that is the direction of obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And obedience means what? Like that we worship Allah, that we submit our desires before Allah. Like we don't become the slaves of our desires, rather we become the slaves of Allah. So when you submit your desire to Allah, then you become the slave of Allah. But when you submit yourself to your desire, meaning that you give your desire whatever it wants, then you become the slave of your desire. And that's the key reason for why the nations split apart. Like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent us as one nation, the human race. Like we're the progeny, the offspring of Adam alayhi salam. Right? We've come down generation after generation, but we began with Adam alayhi salam, right? But we went on to different routes. Like how do we get onto those different routes? Like when we stopped obeying, when the people, the humans, they stopped obeying Allah and they started obeying their desires. And who was pulling their desires? Shaitan was pulling their desires. And so they were pulled in this direction or that direction, and they end up on a path that ends up harming them. Because look, obedience to Allah is in service of yourself. Like you serve your own needs by obeying Allah, because everything that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has been created in the service of humanity. Like it serves us, like the earth, it serves us, it produces for us food. The sky, it serves us, it gives us water that we can drink. Like the animals, they serve us, the cows, they give us milk. We eat the meat of the animals. Like everything on the face of the planet is there to serve us. The night and the day, they serve us. You know, the circadian rhythm, like all of this, it serves us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created all of this in the service of humanity. So if you are obeying Allah, then all of creation will serve you. And essentially you end up serving yourself because of the obedience of Allah. But the minute you stop obeying Allah, the minute the nation of Islam stops obeying Allah, then what happens? The shaitan is pulling them in this direction or that direction, away from that balance, away from the service of themselves, meaning away from the benefit that they can derive from obedience of Allah, and they end up doing things that harm them. People drink alcohol and it harms them. People end up taking drugs, it harms them. People eat haram meat, they eat pork, and it harms them because the pork, it has harm in it. So when they eat it, it harms their physical being and it harms their intellectual being. And ultimately, if your physical and intellectual person is harmed, then it doesn't matter if the whole world is amazing, because your physical being and your mental and spiritual being is crumbling. So even if it's a sunny day and it's an amazing environment that we find ourselves in, if we physically, mentally are crumbling, then we can't attain any benefit from the dunya around us. And that's what happens when you move away from the obedience of Allah. You lose the benefit of your environment. You lose the benefit of everything that Allah has created in service of you. And then you find yourself falling apart. And then your life is falling apart. Why is everything going wrong? Like, why is everything going wrong? Look at your deeds. So this is the number one lesson. Look at your deeds. Are you serving Allah or are you serving your desires? Which one is it? Because if you are serving Allah, then surely, like, there is a solution to every problem. Surely Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will rescue you at every corner, every dark moment in your life. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will pull you out of it. And if you look back in your life, you will find that every dark moment in your life, when you turned to Allah, Allah pulled you out of it. There's not a single moment that when you asked Allah, Allah didn't pull you out of it. Maybe you forgot about it, but Allah pulled you out of it every single time. But as for the service of your desires, if you are serving your desires, then know that your desire will never pull you out of the bad situation. Your desire will entrench you and push you further into that bad situation until, like, you feel despair and you feel completely lost. And if you are feeling that, then the number one solution to that is turn back to Allah, because the doors of mercy are always open. Allah will never let you down. Even, doesn't matter how bad you've been, if you turn back to Allah, Allah will save you. Allah will save you from yourself, from your desires, from all the situations around you. There's only one solution. And that solution is to connect with Allah. Because if you connect with Allah, Allah will save you in every possible way. And this is ultimately the greatest gift that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you, that connection with Himself, Azza wa Jal. And so here, in this session, if there's one thing you should take away, is that doesn't matter what you've done in your life, doesn't matter how bad it is, doesn't matter how your life hasn't turned out the way you wanted it to, like, you can still change it. But the only way to change it is to connect to the ultimate creator of the heavens and earth, the one who controls all of this. Because if everything in your world is falling apart, there's only one Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's only one creator, there's only one all-powerful that can make everything happen, can change everything in a blink of an eye. And so the thing is, you have to decide, like, will you obey your desires and become the slave of your desires, or will you obey Allah and become the slave of Allah? Because if you as an individual do this, and every individual in this nation does this, then we find ourselves in the solution. We find ourselves in the mercy of Allah, and we will find ourselves becoming stronger and stronger and stronger until we are happy with where we are. And ultimately, that connection with Allah is what will give us success as an individual, as a group, as a society, as a human race. That connection with Allah. If you connect to Allah, then you will attain that. And this is the reason for why the world is suffering from the problems it's suffering from. Like, if it's disconnected from the guidance of Allah, then it can't benefit from the guidance of Allah. It can't benefit from everything around, all the things that Allah has made subservient to your and my needs. So inshallah, I'm going to leave you with that. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.